when you first started your journey of your career and stuff like that,
Mhm.
think back to that and your younger self, and now looking back and go, what would you tell that younger self now? Because now you know where you are, Blair. What would you tell that your younger self?
I would tell my younger self to pay attention to what brings you joy.
Mhm.
Right. So yes, I was and still am very interested in history and philosophy and psychology. But part of me throwing myself into that was, quite honestly, I was trying to assert that I'm an intelligent woman.
Mm.
Because I didn't get a lot of validation for my brain growing up. And, you know, that was also one of the hardest parts for me being a stay-at-home mom.
Mm-hmm.
Being married to somebody who's a prominent figure in our community, right? And, you know, being on his arm and being introduced to people. And as soon as, you know, the first question everybody asks you is, what do you do for a living? Because apparently that's the only thing that matters. And when you
Right.
say I'm a stay-at-home mom, like suddenly I'm no longer intelligent or interesting, you know? And so, you know, I kind of have a more gentle nature. I don't speak with a lot of authority about things. And I just felt like I was fighting this perception that I wasn't an intelligent person. And that at that time in my life, in my late teens, you know, 18, 19, early 20s, that desire to prove myself intellectually overpowered my desire to find and nurture my gifts, right? To like seek happiness, you know? And I had lots of signs growing up that I probably belong in the arts community. You know?
But you ignored them? Is that what you're saying?
I did. I suppressed it. And, you know, a lot of that was on me. That was my choice, to suppress it. But I also was raised by two wonderful, supportive, but very practical parents, right? Who were like, oh, you want to do art? How are you going to make money off of that? Like, I don't understand how that leads to financial security. Therefore, why don't you do that as a hobby instead? Because, you know, I can't conceive of how that works out for you.
Because
and
like,
I listened to that. Yeah. And I think, you know, being rural, like I'm from rural Minnesota, right? It's small town culture. And I think that fed into that though, too, of like, maybe things are possible for some people, but not necessarily possible for us here in, a rural small town. And I do think that, you know, people around here probably talk themselves out of a lot of dreams because they seem so hard or far away or maybe even unreasonable, which I would tell my younger self, don't listen to that. Don't fall for that.
Absolutely. Because it's these you grow up and you have these blocks, and part of it is like that inner blocks that are, stop you from doing things, or money blocks that your parents are very pragmatic. They're probably trying to think, hey, I need to keep you secure, and I need to have you be safe and be stable where as far as finances are concerned. So that scares me. The parents, it scares, you know, and they want the best for you, but it's
Right.
their inner blocks, their money blocks going, oh, no, 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 no. That's not the route. We don't understand that route.
Yeah. And as a parent of young adults now, I can empathize with that
Mhm.
feeling. Like, you know, we definitely want to support our kids' dreams wherever that leads them, even if we don't understand it. But of course, we want them to be financially independent from us, as young adults. So I get that, like that questioning and that concern. And because you do see it a part of your child's health and well-being, right? Is can they meet their needs
Right. Right.
without us enabling or them relying on us to do it for them. So I get it. I get it.
Same, same. I have a young adult and a 16-year-old for sure. And you start thinking of like, we're not going to be around, forever. How are they going to take care of themselves? Yeah. So yeah, you start worrying about all of that.
Definitely.
Yes. So Blair is a beautiful artist who has these incredible gifts. And so we're going to show some pictures of her work. And but take us through your journey of how you came about this medium that you now have created into this beautiful artwork.
Okay. So I entered into this in a really unusual way. My family's Native American. I'm the only non-Native in my immediate family. And we try to walk a traditional path. So my kids participated in a Native American ceremony. Like each kid goes through the ceremony, and as part of the offering for that ceremony, we're required to make blankets. And being a creative person, I abandoned the idea of just doing block squares for their blankets pretty early on. And because it was the only contribution I could make as a white person to their ceremony, to this like huge spiritual transition in their lives, I really gave everything I had to those blankets. And I pictorially depicted the Native American names that they were gifted when they were born into each of their blankets. So I did that for a decade. And before that, I didn't know how to sew. I didn't have a mentor with that. I had never made a blanket before in my life. I was just winging it. I was just kind of figuring it out as I went along. And, sewing skills improved over time. I'm not sure how well some of those blankets held up initially, but, I figured it out. And then after my youngest child went through the ceremony, I was done. Like that was my last batch of blankets. And I didn't know if I would ever sew again because I couldn't tell if the love affair I was having was because I love my children. Mm-hmm. And this was for my children, and it was for something really important in their lives. And if that was why I was so fulfilled, mm-hmm. or if there was more. But it didn't take me long to realize that like I love playing with fabric. And so after my studio closed, and I was wondering, well, okay, now what is my contribution to society going to be? How am I going to contribute to my community? What am I going to do now? My husband and I talked it through and agreed that I might be onto something here, that I have a gift that we both would like to see me nurture and see where it goes. And that was just a really exciting moment for me to be in because, making those blankets, I was under a pressure cooker the whole time. And so I had no idea what I could do, like what was possible. I was sewing up until the day we left. like it was under a lot of pressure. And so I was so excited to see what I could do on my own, no timeline, just play. And so my first collection was a portrait of each of my 9 children, my husband and myself.
So beautiful. Oh my gosh. I mean, like I think I've told you before, I just want to go see that in person because it just doesn't do justice just to even see them on pictures.
No, to be honest, it really doesn't. Like, some of the magic is lost on a flat screen, because they have just so much texture and color, and it just like I don't even have the words to explain what it feels like to be standing in presence with them. Like, it's emotional. It connects in a different way than scrolling through your phone, looking at photographs. Yeah.
I said they are just beautiful. So take us through a little bit because and again we're going to show pictures of the work, and it is fabric and it's the design, but how do you start it? Is it that you do a free form drawing and then decide as you go what fabric speaks to you, or how do you go about designing? Because it is, when I see that I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Tony, that's you can see who they are.
Yeah. So those images come to me kind of like a dream. Okay. So like I can see it. And honestly, each time I didn't know what they meant when those images came to me. So when I knew that I wanted to depict my children, I took some videos of them doing sort of what I could see in my head so that I had, a reference for their face. I wanted them to see themselves in it, right? And I wasn't sure, it's hard to get your kid to sit still. And working with fabric, it takes so much longer than a drawing, or a painting. And so I didn't want to rely on that. So I did take photographs of them and videos of them so that I could reference their facial structure. And then I just get started. I start with the face. It is the most complicated part for me, and the most stressful part is the face. So I usually start those after everybody in the house has gone to bed. Right? When I know I won't be interrupted, there's nothing left to do in the house. It's quiet. I can focus. Then I start the face, and then after the face is done, then my kids can cartwheel in my studio and whatever. Like, it doesn't matter what's happening around me, because the rest just feels very intuitive and natural. And even like the rest of the figure, like the rest of the body, is very much more impressionistic instead of realistic. Like, I'm giving you the idea of an arm more so than getting really detailed, technical measuring. I'm not a type A, so measuring things, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be careful. I don't iron things ahead of time. Nothing is precise. Because I just don't work that way, and I don't want to.
You're like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, so over that. So, that's not a quilter way to do it, right? So I don't call myself a quilter. I feel like though our art forms are very much related to each other, master quilters do value precision, and they have lots of technical skills, with their eye, with the sewing machine, with fabric in general, that I don't have. And that's not where I'm putting my energy. Right. I'm going this way instead. So
It's your way, absolutely. Now,
yeah,
in the work that you do, you always put a bird. Can you tell us the significance of the
yeah,
bird and the name of the bird?
yeah. So I use goldfinches in my work. They are, Ojibwe culture, the language bird. Um, but in my work, I have them represent more than the language. I have them represent, the entire depth and breadth of the Ojibwe cultural and spiritual teachings that my children are gifted. So I like to refer it as their like cultural toolbox, right? What they draw on. They represent, you know, that body of knowledge that explains to my kids who they are, where they come from, how to connect to each other, how to connect to the earth, because their cultural way of being, the food, the clothing, the the way things are passed down, it tells my kids all of those things, right? How to connect to themselves, even like, yeah, it's an incredible, um it's an incredible gift basket that they get to carry with them to nourish them throughout the rest of their life. And so those birds play out in different ways in each of my portraits, um relating to my that particular child's story, right? um and like, for an example of that, um I did a portrait of my oldest daughter, and you can hardly tell that it's a portrait. You can barely see her face sticking out, and there's these birds just like fluttering in front of her face. And she has struggled with drug abuse for over a decade now. And so that piece is a prayer that those cultural ways of being will overcome her vision, right? And overcome her vision to distract her or pull her from all of those destructive elements that she's been fixated on. So the birds, yeah, play out in different ways with each of my portraits. And I think they're just going to be a constant in my work, because I've, as I've moved down this path, I've recognized that me being exposed to my husband's traditional culture is like my third eye being opened, right? Or a light bulb having been turned on. It influences how I see the world, how I relate to people, how I relate to the natural world, how I think about myself. Like, it has changed my life that much. It has had that profound of an impact on my understanding. And so they are a constant in my work now.